Mel, I wonder if we can start with you and just what we heard quickly there from Guratan Singh. Jagmeet Singh not doing interviews, not talking about the security situation, but his brother talking about having to check in with security to see a family member and how it seems as if the threat is still there, though the protection is gone. What do you make of all that?
Difficult. And, you know, he talked about normalizing having relationships with Prime Minister Modi. And what I saw from those interactions this week was, you know, B-roll of the Prime Minister and him shaking hands and everything looking kind of normal. And that, to his point, kind of normalizes it and shows Canadians that, you know, this is all good. We're going to continue to have conversations. And I think it's just dangerous. I agree with him that this isn't just something to worry about for Sikh Canadians. I think this is something to worry about for all Canadians. I think we should all be really terrified that you know, the leader of a political party in Canada was targeted by a foreign government to this extent. Every time that, you know, you hear the story that there was armed guards in the room where his wife was delivering a baby is, you know, I'm not a mom and I can't imagine what that feels like. And again, he's the leader of a political party. So what does that say to these other 12 people who, you know, were given a duty to warn? I think that is terrifying. I think the fact that your prime minister doesn't really seem to be taking it seriously is devastating. And I think the fact that, you know, we didn't hear anything this week about that question in particular. Okay, so you've invited him here. How are you going to make sure that he takes this seriously? We've had no information on that. I think that's super troubling. I mean, again, to me, it's also, you know, the precedent that you are setting that this can happen. It could be legitimate. You've got the United States backing it up that this is a thing that has happened. It is linked to the Indian government. Right. And it doesn't really seem to have any result on that. I think that that's a dangerous message to other countries who could consider doing the same thing. I think it's just really dangerous and needs to be taken seriously, and was more than disappointing, devastating that it wasn't taken seriously this week. Okay,
we're about 7 minutes away from the start of the Prime Minister's conference. I say that not to move on from Mel's point, just to keep the audience up to speed here on what's happening. So Greg, I want to get your thoughts on that, and then Fred, and then I do want to pivot back to the C5 conversation because of this is a significant legislative win for the Carney government in the first time in the House of Commons. But you heard from the Prime Minister this week, Greg, when he was asked about the Modi meeting and what assurances they got. And it's unclear to me how concrete the cooperation is going to be on the law enforcement issues. I talked to some people in the national security space, and they're not as bullish as, say, the language is coming from the government. But, you know, the Prime Minister made the point that you've got a lot of Canadians who go back and forth to India. There's no consular services, no high commission. Things were just not working. That needed to get back to normal while you try to deal with these other outstanding issues. I mean, can you reconcile that with what we just heard from Guratan Singh?
No, I can't and I won't. I personally have a big issue with Modi being invited. Perhaps another government official from India, and for all the reasons that Mr. Singh's just said, but also the fact that Modi is not the political force he once was. The last election for him did not go as well as he expected. So I want to set that aside and talk about the greater challenge and threat to politicians. In 2019, the Sergeant at Arms opened 8 files regarding threats to members of Parliament. And in 2024, there were 530. I don't know if people saw this during the election, but the federal government, during the last election, you could apply through the Privy Council office for private security during the campaign. The person who rammed the gates of Rideau Hall trying to kill Justin Trudeau, I have 2 big issues with that. One, the reaction from the public and the media, I thought was shameful. It was a bit of a shrug. And the fact that that individual got as far on that property as he did. And we don't have to think that far back about Jean Chrétien or the time protesters got very close to Brian and Mila Mulrooney. This is being pushed, the big danger of misinformation, disinformation. Look, in the 2021 election, there was some sort of security threat. Very armed security police showed up at an event, and a Toronto Sun columnist tried to say that this was Justin Trudeau playing politics and trying to save his own skin. So look in the States. You
Right.
know, we had a senator, a Republican senator for days left a very awful tweet off about when two state officials, one was killed, their spouse was killed, they were injured. And the attitude where you have to figure out what someone's politics is first before you're going to be critical of it, or it has to happen to me before I care, is horrendous. And I think we really need to push, perhaps now that the standing committees are struck, for Justice Committee to dig in on this.
Right. I mean, look, Greg makes a good point about, toxicity and violence, but like transnational repression is its own thing, kind of, running parallel with what's broadly happening. Just your thoughts on that, Fred, and then I do want to get back to the C5 thing because we only got a couple of minutes for the Prime Minister to come out.
Just on the practicality, just to get right to a practical solution to a lot of this, or at least a measure, we talk about, this country, we have the resources to identify 12 Canadians needed to be informed that they're under risk. Why do we not have the resources or the ability to protect those Canadians? They're on Canadian soil. A foreign country is threatening their lives in some way. We should have a mechanism that we could easily put in place to ensure they're protected, whether they're a leader of a party or just a citizen.
Okay. All right. And because this is the other thing, that whether because the threat has gone away, which doesn't sound like it completely has, or is just no longer a federal leader, the RCMP protection is gone.